Hello and welcome back everyone to Blended Geometry Nodes workshop for Jungle Vines. In our last lesson, we went a little bit over the basics of material shading and how I got these materials set up basically with a basic setup for the PBR material. Now we're going to actually make use out of it, and first things first, we're going to just select either one of the materials, whichever one you'd like. Then we're going to just apply it onto the geometry node itself. So let me just go back onto the modifiers tab. I will go ahead and simply select where it is, which I just realized I've not done. So going back to the geometry node real quick, I will go into geometry nodes tab on the top section. Then we're going to go ahead and just set material. We're going to search for material set. So there you go, set material. We're going to apply it. For the material itself, we want to make sure that the user is able to just customize it whenever you want, so you can apply it and use whichever material you want. So for that, we're going to just create another input within the interface. We're going to scroll down and we're going to just change this socket that I just created, change the name for material, like so. Going to scroll it up to put it into the vines section. Going to change this to be not a float, to be a material, like so. And I'm just going to actually leave it as is and simply select a vine bark, like so. So now once we get back onto here, we're still not going to see anything. The reason being is that we need to apply UV coordinates for it. So the starting point is already there though. If we do remove this, we're not actually going to see anything. There we go. We just need to apply it over here. So let's go ahead and do that actually first. I'm going to just click remove, click Shift A and search for group input. And let me just find the material, put it in here, click Control and H. And there we go. We applied ourselves the material for it. And this again should be a vine bark, like so. There we go. We got ourselves a basic color for it. But as you can see, we don't have the material set up on itself. So for us to do that, we're now going to go on to the shaders tab. We're now going to make sure that this is set to object, shader type, and we're going to select vine bark, like so. Now for this, we will simply need to make sure we are using texture itself. And let me just actually have a look at what's happening for Suzanne. I think if I go to material, yeah, there we go. What's happening is basically the Suzanne itself is using the material on its own because it had no material as an object. So what I will do is I will remove this material. I will add a new one for Suzanne. So we can call this Suzanne material, like so. Now this should stay just a simple material. I will go back to modifiers and now I will make sure that this is set up with the material for the geometry node. Let me just go ahead and have a look real quick. Just going to actually reapply this vine bark. There we go. Going back to shader and there we go. Now it's only on the vines themselves. So whenever you're using this, make sure your actual object has a material on itself. And now for us to go back onto the shading, we're going to switch this to vine bark. So we're actually only using this. We're going to make sure we're using, this is basically the setup that we get with the Node Wrangler by clicking Control Shift and T. And to get this mapping, all you got to do is just click Shift and A, search for mapping, vector mapping, like so. And we're going to be using this one instead. So instead of this, that's going to go from the UVs. We're going to be using the mapping from our data that we just created previously. Let's go ahead and connect it right away and we're going to get some weird results for now. And I just realized that for some reason I think I clicked Control Z and it undid my material. We'll just go ahead and create a new one for Suzanne. There you go. Going to go ahead and select this all object, click assign, and there we go. That's an alternative way for switching the materials. You go within edit mode, you click assign with the material selected, and that will assign your material onto an object. And because everything else is not a mesh technically yet, because everything is in a material node, in geometry node, it will not affect the assigned material that we have within the vines. So yeah, let's go back onto the material over here. And for some reason, it still wants to just switch like that. And I'm not sure why it's doing that, but either way, what we can do instead is we can go over here, just click on the mesh basically that's within the resource pack, and we can just work from this mesh instead. It's actually going to be way easier for us since we can just preview the mesh. And yeah, we'll just grab this, click GX, just put it closer so we could actually see the mesh and how it looks like on the Suzanne. Okay, so the next thing is that we need to grab ourselves an attribute. So let's grab ourselves, search for attribute, input attribute. Then we're going to make sure it's set to type geometry. So it's going to search for the name from the geometry itself that's been applied onto our modifiers basically. We can now attach this to the vector. The name itself, let's not forget that it has to be the same. So the easiest way for us to do that would be if we were to select back onto the monkey, go onto geometry nodes and just simply select this name over here, click Ctrl C to copy it, go back onto shading over here and just go back onto the bark, just paste in this name, and that's making sure that we're not actually miswriting the name, making some human errors basically. We're just avoiding that at all costs. Now we should have ourselves something like this on the Suzanne's head. We should have some bark texture already visible a little bit, although as you can see, it's still stretched out. It still has some work to be done. The reason being is that by default, the information that we provided doesn't actually try to go from 0 to 1 space. It doesn't actually try to get the right proportions from the texture. It just simply makes use out of the coordinates, out of the points that we stored. So what we're going to do is we're going to just simply get ourselves a vector map node in here. So let's go ahead and just grab a vector map like so, just add it in here, change this to a multiply like so, and change all the values for now to 1 so we could get the default value. Now we can see what each one of them does. So for example, changing this value will stretch it out in probably, it's not going to be quite as easy to see, but it's going to be probably in this direction horizontally. I'm going to keep this as 1 for now. The next one is going to be in regards to vertical. You can see it going in regards to this area over here. And the final one is also going to be in regards to Z value. So that's going to be more visible perhaps over here. If I were to change this like so, although it's not quite as visible, we're going to basically change both of these values at the bottom to 2 just to get more resolution. And now in order to fix the stretching, we're going to lower this value on the vector itself. We're going to lower it slowly, and it doesn't seem to want to work. So I'm just trying to figure out why that is the case. And let me just go ahead and try to rotate these around. Let's see, there we go. Now it seems to be working. All right. So by simply rotating this texture over here, we're just making sure that it's positioned properly to the way we want it to be. And yeah, we're just changing this to a value of 90 basically. We're going to get ourselves this sort of a result, which is already looking very nice. I'm just going to check real quick the other sides as well, if we need to rotate them. So for example, over here, if we see them stretching out a little bit, we can fix that with just rotating them, yeah, 90 degrees, like so. And as for Z value, let's go ahead and check if that needs to be rotated. That does not need to be rotated. Let's go ahead and keep it as a 0 value. And there we go. So the vector over here, we can just basically control the scaling of the bark. And leaving it as something to a value of 0.2 is really nice already. Let's go ahead and keep it as is. And there we go. We got ourselves a nice bark setup. So basically, all we need is these 3 nodes. We can reuse them in other areas as well. To reuse it in other materials, for example, in our own custom materials, what we can do is we can simply, well, go back onto the material. We can copy these 3 materials over here, click Ctrl C, go to this one over here, click Control V. Doesn't seem to want to pick it up. So I'm just going to go ahead and select them all. Click Control C, put them in here, Control V. There we go. Now it works. Let's go ahead and just put this in to this dot over here. And going back to our geometry setup, we can change now the material to vine by bark mossy, and that's the result that we're going to get. So all in all, it's already looking really, really nice. But let's say we want to have a little bit more control in regards to the material itself. We can actually get that control quite easily. We can go onto our material setup. We can go onto the base color and tweak some values. So this is the vine moss. I will show you a couple of ways for just quick tweaks. Basically, if you want to have a brighter result out of these vine setups, what we can do is we can click Shift and A, click search and search for curve RGB curves. It is a very useful tool for when we want to just have some quick adjustments for the contrast, for the brightness of the material. By simply clicking and tapping, just a quick tap basically on the node itself, we're going to get this dot, which allows us now to control how bright the material is. So we can just use this dot now to tweak it in. If we add another dot by accident, we can just drag it out to the very end over here, and that removes this dot like so. And just like that, we can adjust this to our desires basically. If we want to, let's say, change the color of it, we can also do that quite easily. Actually, I will show you how to do that. One of the easiest ways for us to change the color would be to actually use color mix. Probably that would be the best way. There are multiple ways for changing the color, to be honest, but I will show you the most logical way, I'd say, in my personal opinion. So if we were to search for color mix color, that is, we can get this type of a node. Now, if we were to add this, we can see that this is what we're getting. We want to make sure that this is set as 1, which will allow you to overlay two different color information at once completely. So this is already set with A and B, because B is trying to be overlaid with the factor of 1. It's just going to give us this result. However, if we were to change the mixing from just a mix to a color, there we go. We can now tell which color we want basically. So we can use this B to just change the color, any type of color that we want actually, and it's going to give us some very, very nice results just like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it in regards to the setup. I really hope you enjoyed this video. And now in the next lesson, we're just going to get ourselves a quick final setup, a quick overview of what we did. And of course, we are going to need to clean up a little bit in regards to this mess. So yeah, that's going to be it from this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be seeing you in a bit.